Hey guys, Chelsea here from Making Manzanita, and today we are going to teach you how to build a wooden bench with an upholstered seat. All right, let's dive right in. So the first step is to cut your wood down to size. For this bench, we're using a combination of 2x4s and 1x4s for the bench base, and then a sheet of particle board for the bottom of the upholstered seat. So we have the woodworking plans available for this. You can grab a link to those in the description below, and it'll have all of the cut lists and the measurements so you can build this right alongside with us. For the connections of the 2x4s, we opted for pocket hole joinery, and that helped us avoid patching a bunch of screw holes. And then we moved on to assembly, and the design of this one calls for the sides of the bench to be like a slight U-shaped with the bottom of the bench sitting about 3 inches up from the ground. Alright, so we have our bench base built, all except for the trim, which will be up around the edges. We're going to wait on the trim because first we want to finish the cushion, which we are upholstering. So you can see the base of the top of the bench where the cushion will be, we're using particle board. And then I picked up this 2-inch foam cushion and upholstery vinyl that looks kind of like a dark brown leather. I got some batting. Cutting your cushion down to size using a straight board and a utility knife, and the goal is to have the cushion have about a 1/4 inch overhang on all sides of the particle board. All right, so we have our cushion cut down. We used just a utility knife and we put like a piece of wood down and pressed it down so it was kind of give us a straight edge to work with. We have it lined up with our particle board. Now we're going to use this batting and we're going to just put it on the top and the sides, not all the way wrapped under, and we're going to spray it into place with this spray adhesive. That spray adhesive ended up working perfectly. You just spray it on the foam cushion and then place the batting on top of it and just press out the wrinkles to smooth them as you go. Next, lay the vinyl flat face down and center the cushion and the particle board on top and start stapling. On the bottom side of the bench, we actually tapped the corners of the particle board with a hammer really lightly so they weren't quite as sharp to avoid piercing through the vinyl on the corner there. So we recommend starting with the short sides and then handling the corner and then the long sides. And you definitely want to have a pneumatic staple gun for this job. We don't think that an electric or hand-powered stapler really has enough power behind it to get the staples through the layer of vinyl and into the particle board. So definitely would recommend that, and it does help to have 2 people for this part. So you can have one person kind of holding the vinyl in place and pulling it nice and tight, and the other one attaching the staples. We used 1/2 inch staples and spaced them about less than 1 inch apart. You definitely want to be liberal with the staples. For the corners, what we did is cut off the excess and then folded in the long side and aligned the crease to the corner and then pulled as tight as we could to make sure there was no wrinkles on either side. And then if needed, one person can hold it in place and the other person can staple. And don't be shy, really get a lot of staples in the corners there and then along the edges as well. And when you're all done, you can simply cut off the excess with a utility knife. All right, so we're done upholstering the top. Went pretty smooth, not too bad. So now this obviously goes on top of the bench. So now Logan is gonna work on building the trim pieces. We waited to cut them until we had the bench upholstered because we knew that there was gonna be some extra stuff on the edges here. And so we wanted to get this upholstered just to see the exact size that we needed because the trim is going to wrap around the edges of this once it gets set on top. So that's why we waited, just to make sure the cuts were perfect. Next, it's time to attach the trim sides. So we opted for a 45-degree miter cut on the corners for a nice professional finish. And next you can just attach the trim pieces to the bench base, and we were using our pneumatic brad nailer for this. And we used 1.5 inch brad nails in the corners, and we nailed it into the 2x4s, and then we also nailed it into the other trim piece in the corner at that miter. And we added the trim pieces to sit about 1 inch above the top of the base, and so that's just so the cushion has a little platform and the trim really wraps around the cushion to get a nice professional look to it. Next, you can fill any of the nail holes, imperfections, and joints with wood filler, and then wait till it's dry and sand smooth with 150 grit sandpaper. Hey guys, I'm out here with the bench, and I had a little dilemma yesterday because it came time after we finished the upholstery, it came time to figure out stain, and I got really stumped because if you see here, the 2x4s on this are kind of more of a darker, almost reddish tone, and then this wood that we used for the trim, I believe is poplar, and we had just chosen kind of the cheapest wood we can find so that we could make this bench on a budget. But when it ended up happening, once we got everything together and kind of started assembling, I realized that these two wood tones were very different and they were going to accept stain colors very differently as well. So I messed around with a bunch of samples. So this is a scrap piece of the 2x4, you can see, and then this is a scrap piece of the lighter wood. So I started messing around with a bunch of stain colors. Originally, I had wanted to keep the wood lighter, but I realized pretty quickly that that wasn't going to be possible because when you put any sort of sealer on this darker 2x4, it really darkens it up, even just like a regular natural. And compared to this one, it was just such a big difference. I messed around with a million different stains, some oils. I even got crazy. I was trying to mix and match different stains to see if I could match them. The closest thing I could figure out, let me see if I can figure it out. There was a red, I believe it was this one, and my stain, that one was the closest match, which is pretty close if you look at those two colors. Here, I'll hold it like this. Pretty close, right? And that was getting, I think it was, I was using red chestnut maybe on this. And this was a close match and it would look fine. It was too orange for me. And I just didn't want to pull out all those orange tones. And when you put the leather next to it, I just didn't like it. So I needed to switch gears. Then I tested out a couple of paints. This was like kind of a grayish white. This is kind of a beigey white. They both look pretty white on this wood though. And again, that would have worked fine. Here's what it looks like with the leather. It's not what I wanted. I didn't want a solid paint. So here's what I'm going to try, and I've never tried it before, but we are going to try using this pre-stain conditioner, which just helps prevent blotchiness and gets more of an even color. So I'm going to try that. We've never used conditioner, so that we're going to try, and then we're also going to try gel stain, and I'm going to do a couple more samples before I decide, but I went and picked these up today. This is like a simply white, kind of lightens up the wood and almost makes it look whitewashed. And then this one is a slate color. It's kind of like a grayish brown. I'm going to mess around with these, maybe even mixing them. But the reason I think I'm going to go with a gel stain is a surface laying stain and it's a little thicker. It doesn't get absorbed as much into the wood. So I'm thinking it'll be a better solution to get these two different colors of wood more even because it's thicker, it's more uniform, and it sits on top of the wood. So we'll give it a try. In the meantime, I have all the holes patched on everything. This is nice and dry. We used this plastic wood filler, and I'm gonna get everything sanded now. It's looking good. Eventually, I settled on doing the slate color of the gel stain. This is what it looked like after one coat of the gel stain, and I ended up doing, I think, 2 coats of that gel stain, and I applied it really heavily in the direction of the wood grain and then wiped it off after 3 minutes, and then waited about 8 to 10 hours to dry before that second coat. Then you want to move on and seal everything. We did about 4 to 5 coats of a spray lacquer finish with a satin sheen. Next, you can simply put the cushion into place and then secure it in the corners from the bottom with those pocket hole screws. I absolutely love how this bench turned out. It turned out better than I even imagined it, and I think it's perfect here under the window in this room. You could also put it at the foot of your bed if you wanted to. It's the perfect size for that. And I think it's going to be great to serve as a luggage rack in this room once we convert our home to a short-term rental, which is our plan. This bench is really easy to build, and it was a super fun project. I hope that you guys will grab the woodworking plans if you want to follow along and just follow this tutorial and make this come to life in your home. And let us know if you have any questions at all about this build or any other of our DIY